Hi everyone and welcome back to Rena Wonders. So today we're going to be doing a very exciting haul. Book Depository recently opened back up and I am so freaking pumped. If you guys aren't familiar with Book Depository, basically it's an online bookstore, and if you're the kind of person who's always lusting after titles that aren't available here in the Philippines, then Book Depository is definitely the place for you because they ship for free worldwide. So yes, I was kind of devastated when last year they closed and stopped shipping to the Philippines. Well, they didn't close, like they were still shipping to most of the Western world, but I believe they weren't shipping to some locations in Asia and I think in Australia. So they're back, and of course I was going to go and pick up some books. So yeah, we have a pretty hefty haul here, and I have an exciting book as well that isn't from Book Depository but which is very exciting if you're a coffee lover. And speaking of coffee, today I am drinking some coffee, so bear with me because I'm super duper hungover. Yesterday I had a Zoom inuman with a friend of mine and I wasn't expecting to drink. So if you've ever had a drink on an empty stomach, you'll know that that stuff goes to your head so freaking fast. And old age is getting to me, I swear, because there was a time when I could throw a few back, get a couple of hours of sleep and be perfectly fine. But now, even if I sleep for 7 hours, I still wake up feeling weird and fuzzy wuzzy. So yeah, but I still wanted to do this haul for you guys today. So yeah, on a funny side note before I start, someone asked me the other day, like, how do you film booktube videos in the dead of summer wearing a turtleneck? And the answer to that, my friends, is that all my turtlenecks are crop tops. So actually hindi siya mainit. Anyway, super random. Onto the book. So the first few books that I got are poetry collections, and I'm so freaking excited for this. For those of you guys who may be new to this channel or maybe don't know this about me, I am a creative writing MFA major, so that's Master of Fine Arts at De La Salle University, Manila, and I have chosen to do my thesis in poetry for some crazy ass reason, and it's always so difficult to get good poetry collections here. Bookstores, even ones like fully booked, will stock like 1 or 2 at a time, and the rest is stuff that they know will sell, so stuff like Lang Lev, etc. And I have nothing against those kinds of poetry collections, but it's just that for my specific thesis, there's certain parameters that I need to problematize, and so a lot of the poetry collections that I could have used for my thesis proposal or for my comprehensive exams even just weren't available here. So when Book Depository opened up again, I was like, I am going to freaking make sure that I have everything I need for my thesis proposal. So a lot of these poetry books are things that I think are very in line with the direction that I want to go in and the direction that I will be writing in for my thesis as well. The first 2 poetry collections, very ironic that I couldn't get these here because one of them is actually by a Filipino writer. I have talked about her before, but this is 2 or 3 Things by Conchitina, Cruz, or Chingbi. Chingbi is a friend of mine from the BLTX community, and she's also one of my favorite writers. And then this is another one in the series. This is What Do You Expect, Heart by Olvido, Garcia, Valdes. So I'm looking forward to reading these. I believe these were part of a series that came out a couple of years ago, and I think it was launched in Hong Kong or Taiwan. I can't really remember at the moment, but yeah. I actually almost got the entire series of this on this auction fundraiser thing that Chingbi and her friends were doing a couple of months ago, but unfortunately I didn't win the bidding. So yes, I had no option but to buy these on Book Depository. Up next is a book that I feel like everyone who is a poetry enthusiast has read except me, and this is Deaf Republic by Ilya Kaminski. And the thing is, a couple of months ago, back in November, I was a fellow for the UST National Writers Workshop, and everybody was always referencing this book, particularly in reference to my poetry. Like, have you read Deaf Republic by Ilya Kaminski? And I was just like, I haven't. Actually. My friend Austere actually sent me like a scanned copy of his book because I couldn't find it anywhere. So I'm very happy to have this now because I feel like I can read it and write on it and not feel bad. Up next is another major source in my thesis, and this is Tender Buttons by Gertrude Stein. So for those of you guys who may not be familiar with Gertrude Stein, she was a modernist writer, and her preoccupation is basically with experimenting in form, syntax, and in particular grammar. She argued that grammar is one of the things that's incorruptible because you can play with grammar, and the way that grammar works is that it defines your relationship to the world. So if you say something like Weena's coffee, by saying Weena's coffee, you're implying ownership between Weena and the coffee, so that coffee is mine. But if you were to change the apostrophe s into something else, or append something to the apostrophe s that doesn't quite make sense, then it forces you to think of other possibilities and relationships between myself and whatever the object may be. So if you say something like Weena's plant pet, something like that, then you're forced to think of like, oh, what does it mean to own a plant? What does it mean to make a pet of something that you don't view as sentient? Lots of weird artsy stuff like that. So yeah, I'm just very interested in having my own copy of this and maybe more thoroughly examining her work as well with my own two eyes, because most of the examining that I did, re Tender Buttons, really had to do with viewing it from like a critical point of view. And so I had read different essays and critiques of this, but to read the entire work like cover to cover is not something that I have done. I've read excerpts and I've read the different sort of mini chapters within the book, but this entire volume on its own, that is something we are getting done in the month of June. Up next is a book that I have actually read on ebook multiple times. This is Soft Science by Franny Choi, and this is a book that I feel is just perfect. I feel like it's hard to say that a book is perfect or that a book accomplishes what it sets out to accomplish in a way where there's almost zero room for improvement, I think. But this is one of the books that I think really is like that. Something that always astounds me about Franny Choi is just how far her poetry has come. When I first discovered her, she was still part of Project Voice, which is the spoken word outfit spearheaded by Phil and Sarah Kay. But then I became more interested in her because I read one of her books, Floating Brilliant Gone, and I was just struck by how the poems really felt like they were meant for the page, and it didn't feel like a translation, which sometimes is how spoken word poetry can read once you read it on the page, because of course there's the act of translating that sort of faux personal, very conversationally driven type of delivery to the page where things are less immediate, where the person is hearing it in their own voice as opposed to the voice of the other person who is delivering it, or the voice of the poet slash persona. So yeah, and from that moment, cue Shania Twain, from that moment I was in love with Franny Choi and her poetry. I want to get my hands on her other collection, which is the only one that I don't have, which is Death by Sex Machine. And I feel like she's crazy. Like, she has such beautiful imagery and she's not afraid to play with form. My favorite poem in this, just for the ambition of it, is one that's called, hold up, they don't love you like I love you, Glossary of Terms. So you can see it's sort of like a glossary slash Punnett square, and it's just so freaking cool. And then up next is Sympathetic Little Monsters by Cameron Awkward Rich. So I heard about Cameron Awkward Rich through Franny Choi's Instagram. I think Cameron Awkward Rich is her partner, and I read some of his poetry on his Instagram page, and it's just so freaking good. I feel like the proper word for Cameron Awkward Rich's poetry is just that it feels very visceral, and I got goosebumps like reading his poems on his Instagram page. So I was very interested in what he could do with a full-length collection. So up next I have The Carrying by Ada Limon. Ada Limon is a poet that was introduced to me by my friend Austere, and last year we went to watch one of her poetry readings, and I just really fell in love with her work. I feel like she has this way of writing poetry that's languid but still emotionally evocative, still intellectually stimulating, and still wild. I don't know how to quite describe it, but yeah, there's a certain wildness to her poetry, so I'm very, very interested in reading this whole collection and just seeing what it's about. And next is the only non-fiction thing here. So this is A Woman Looking at Men Looking at Women by Siri Hustvedt. And Siri Hustvedt is one of my favorite writers. I've spoken about her a lot on this channel. She's just so amazing and so eloquent. She writes great novels that you can lose yourself in, and there's always something about the atmosphere that she conjures and the way that she describes the relationships between people that I find very, very striking. Her creative nonfiction is also super amazing. In particular, her essays are just like mind-blowing because she knows so much about art, about psychology. She knows so much about women's studies too, and I learned a lot reading from her just about the experience of being a woman, which sounds strange because like you should know, right, if you're a woman, but there are certain things I feel that we're kind of blind to and that we don't really see in everyday life, and she has a really, really great way of pointing that out. So I'm very interested in reading this because this collection in particular kind of focuses on the male gaze and what women do once they experience that, and once you're able to see it and kind of look back at it, like what is that experience like? What are the dissonances that exist within that experience? Now, on to the only fiction things in this haul. I kind of fell in love with Ben Barnes, not gonna lie. I've loved him since Prince Caspian, but Ben Barnes as the Darkling is just freaking insane. I don't read as much fantasy as I used to. I think the last fantasy series that I read was V.E. Schwab's Shades of Magic trilogy, and I freaking love that. I freaking cried. When are they turning that into a Netflix series? Like, I will be there. I'll be there with the popcorn. So I got Shadow and Bone by Leigh Bardugo, Ruin and Rising, I think this is the third book actually, and Siege and Storm. So I'm very excited to read this. I actually read Six of Crows, but like most of the plot escapes me now, and I had the unfortunate luck of leaving that book in our old house before it was sold and before we left, so life is sad that way. But yeah, I might actually pick those two up again, like Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom, if I get the chance to, and if I end up enjoying these and am in the mood for that. Then last but not the least is a read that's a little bit weird coming off of these other books, but I thought I'd share it anyway. So this is World Atlas of Coffee by James Hoffman. If you guys aren't familiar with James Hoffman, he's an award-winning barista, he's a coffee expert, he's a YouTuber. You guys should totally check out his channel if you love coffee. This guy. He knows so much about coffee, and my friend Gio, who is a barista, he always talks about James Hoffman as like a great reference learning how to brew your own coffee, and I am a huge pour-over enthusiast, and before watching his channel there was so much that I didn't really know about pour over. I just got this impression that like you boiled the water and you poured it over the coffee and waited for it to kind of circle the drain and, you know, become a beautiful cup of coffee. But there's so much more to it than that. And in this book he also talks a lot about sourcing coffee and all of that sustainability goodness, and yeah, that's something I'm interested in and a cause that I think is worth standing behind. So very, very excited to read this. And that's it for today's haul, you guys. Thank you so much for joining me. Please give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and don't forget to subscribe if you'd like to see more videos from me. That's it for now, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!